First citizen. Many politicians have made a career of talking about the national debt while at the same time doing nothing to reduce or eliminate it, election cycle after election cycle. How do you propose to change this?
Washington muddles on as if there's no consequence to continued deficit spending and the attendant accumulation of unimaginable indebtedness. The Republican and Democrat inability to pay much more than lip service to solving the nation's financial woes is testimony to the insidiousness of their addiction to profligate spending. The solutions offered by the parties at best simply delay an inevitable collapse of the Ponzi schemes that keep the federal government doors open. Americans firmly believe that solution at hand does not include Republicans and Democrat leadership. Generation X, millennials, new millennials have had their futures mortgaged with baseless scrip. I now empower them by standing up and declaring that there will be no intergenerational transfer of debt on the basis that it's immoral to do so, and that this crisis has been deceptively foisted upon them without consent by elected officials whose actions leading up to this point are at the very least misfeasant. So today, it is not with a heavy heart that I declare the federal government bankrupt. This is the essential step that Republicans and Democrats will never take, but must be taken to protect these generations by refusing to pick up the tab for a decades-long bacchanalia.
First citizen.
Next.
First citizen, how are you unilaterally going to declare what is perceived to be the wealthiest country in the world summarily bankrupt?
The wealth of the citizenry is not yoked to a federal government that's insolvent beyond repair by traditional remedies. The problem is so egregious that one should no longer refer to this country as the United States, but rather the dependent states on a borrowed time. Effective today, no new debt issued by the federal government will be considered valid by Americans. History is replete with examples of nations saddled with an out-of-touch political class that debased the citizenry's future while maintaining an illusion of prosperity until the house of cards collapses. Safe to say, 1, this is where we now find ourselves, and 2, in a global sense, the faster we race to and touch the bottom, the likelihood of our being back on top first increases. Next.
First citizen, please shed some specifics on how this has to play out, at least in a budgetary sense, between now and the end of the current president's term.
The Republicans and Democrats in Congress are unable to execute their most fundamental task, which is to prepare a fiscally sound budget in a timely manner. This intractable dysfunction alone is sufficient to dismiss them completely from all fiscal matters henceforth. Today, I'm introducing the framework of a new direction and business model. I'm declaring that the federal budget be cut to $2 trillion effective January 1st, 2017. Insofar as Americans are concerned, the federal government's lawmaking and regulatory functions are now on hold until the new budget takes effect under new management. Having declared the government bankrupt, there are no unfunded mandates or unfunded liabilities that need to be considered. The $2 trillion will be divided between 4 buckets in descending priority as follows: military, citizen dividend, federal government operations, and debt service. The focus of the federal government will be downsizing to reflect the new budget, the main priorities of which will be to right-size the military and to secure the power grid. Failure in this regard by the current cabal will result in Americans losing you. While entire departments will be eliminated or cannibalized, the new budget will specifically exclude funding for Amtrak and the post office. They will be successfully privatized. No provision will be made for congressional or presidential retirement for current and past office holders. will eliminate funding for the Congressional Air Force out at Andrews. And by the way, the penny, just like the Department of Education, is to be eliminated, as well as the use of Air Force One for golf outings and political fundraising. The federal government would derive revenue from a flat tax, 10% on wages only, and import duties. All other taxation schemes are reserved to the states, as this flat tax will be paid to state government, which will in turn remit to the federal government on the taxpayer's behalf. Federal tax code will become a paper recycler's wet dream. Next question.
First Citizen, you mentioned something about electoral reform. Do you expect the traditional parties to readily adapt to proposed change?
Ever notice how easy it is to spot a phony politician? Look for the rolled up sleeves and the frequent use of words like, quite frankly. They don't quite get that you've never expected anything less. Today, I am administering a lapel pin enema to these frauds by canceling their franchise. That's right. As you know them today, the Republicans and Democrat are through. The last straw for me was when they collectively failed to address the issue of properly vetting nominees immediately after this last fiasco concerning questionable citizenship. They'll be having their last conventions next year for the purpose of selecting presidential contenders. Should they have any relevance thereafter, they will be relegated to the status of run-of-the-mill special interest group without federal funding, of course. Consistent with my election process reforms, the 2016 presidential election, the two major parties will select from among sitting governors as their candidate pool. Americans will not consider the election valid if the parties do not comply with this selection methodology. By the way, I'm declaring the White House a pantsuit-free zone.
First Citizen.
Next question.
First Citizen, when you speak of election process reform, does this mean the complete end of political parties?
It's way past time to end the contentious wave extortion racket practiced not only to elect a president, but for all elected federal office holders. It's way past time to shorten the electoral process and to the greatest extent take the money out of it. Since the Republicans and Democrat electioneering franchise is canceled, there is absolutely no reason to financially support either party and every reason to starve them out. It's no longer okay to contribute to their traveling roadshow. Therefore, anyone considering a financial contribution to either the Republicans or Democrat should redirect their absolutely non-tax deductible political contribution to firstcitizen.us.
First Citizen.
First Citizen, are you saying that the two major political parties are irrelevant?
Yes. The stunning ineffectiveness of their policies make that obvious and provides the basis for immediately removing them from being part of formulating any solutions. Not only have they taken the country to the crumbling precipice of financial collapse, they've corrupted the election process so that its only purpose is to perpetuate their good cop, bad cop flip-flop, deprive them of their tools of the trade, and no longer have mainstream relevance to the extent that they control the electoral process. By devaluing your vote, they've seriously devalued your citizenship. A major step toward reform is eliminating the opportunity for voter fraud. Democrats, especially under the rubric of inclusion, have been working in overdrive to collapse any remaining integrity in the voting process. Americans will not accept the outcome of the next national election unless it includes voter identification.